We will get started shortly. Once again, wanted to thank you for joining us on it appears to be now a cloudy Thursday evening, but we'll get started momentarily. Thanks.
Bienvenidos a todos. Iniciaremos este evento en un momento. Gracias por unirse, por participar en este evento en esta tarde nublada. Iniciaremos el programa en un momento.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. Thank you once again for joining us for our monthly Washington Area Program of Projects CAG meeting. We're glad you're here. A little short meeting tonight, hopefully an hour or less. Want to be mindful that we give you your evening as well. So thank you for joining us. Next slide, please. So as usual, we have Spanish interpretation available. So for interpretation, you will need to connect using either a tablet or a computer. And then at the bottom of your screen, there will be a globe icon, bottom right of your screen, and please select the language of your preference. And you do, if English is your preferred language, you do need to select English. And if Spanish, then please select Spanish.
Buenas noches a todos. Queremos darles la bienvenida esta noche y
And we'll ask Francisco to translate that as well.
¿Me escuchas, Anthony? Anthony, can you hear me? Anthony, can you hear me?
Anthony, are you already in a language?
I just moved to English, yes.
Okay, then you want pop back out and we're all in the big one first and then you can go in.
Oops, okay.
Go ahead.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Francisco, yes, or Nora?
Okay, great.
Do I need to pop back out too?
Possibly. I think we were ahead of the game, Catherine, I believe.
Okay.
Buenas noches
Oops.
a todos. Queremos darle la bienvenida. Esta es una reunión bilingüe. Si hacen el favor de
Michelle, we can't hear him, and we're in the main channel, I believe.
¿Aló? ¿Me pueden escuchar? ¿Me pueden escuchar?
Sí.
Yes.
Ok, buenas noches. Sí, solo
Okay.
estamos
Oh,
dando
so Jim is saying there's no audio. He was Jim Garcia. He was going to log off and log back on. You can hear me, correct?
Anthony, we can hear you.
Yes.
And you're drowning out the interpreter.
Buenas noches, solo queríamos darles indicaciones de cómo conectarse al canal de interpretación. Esta es una reunión bilingüe. Si hacen el favor de seleccionar, hacer clic en el icono de interpretación en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla, el globito, y escogen el idioma de su preferencia. We're good to go, Anthony.
So now everyone should choose a language.
Okay. Everyone can still hear me then?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. And Catherine, I can hear you. Okay. Next slide, please. So again, once again, welcome. And at this time, I'm going to turn over our conversation to our wonderful facilitator, Catherine Archuleta with Dimension Strategies. Thank you.
I'm so glad to be here with you as we enter into the fall season. We've had an opportunity to talk about some of the things that we are going to discuss tonight at our town hall meeting. I think a couple of you were perhaps at that town hall meeting, but we're going to go over some of the same things in addition to some new information as we go through the agenda. You can see up on your screen the agenda for tonight's meeting. It's a shortened meeting, only an hour tonight. But we're going to review for you not only the public meeting agenda, but also some of the survey results that we received at that meeting. And then we're going to go through a 3-month look ahead. And then finally, our usual time for community announcements. So again, a shortened meeting tonight will get you back to your families as quickly as possible. But we did want to have an opportunity to share with those people who were not at the town hall the outcomes and discussions that were held on September 14th. So I think with that, we're turning it over to you, Beth. Is that right?
Actually,
Oh, to Karen. Karen. Sorry, Karen.
No worries, not at all. We're just going to give a brief update on sidewalks. And excuse me, we had a pop-up in the 41st and Fox area last night. So I was just going to share a little bit of the feedback we got there. This is our kind of zoom in on a larger District 9 sidewalk map. And I'm going to pause for a second to make sure we're giving enough time for our interpreters. Okay, so we had a pop-up meeting, as I said, last night at 43rd and Delaware in the 41st and Fox station area, and got some good feedback on sidewalks in that area. If you have your microscopic eye setting on, you could see that we have some purple and blue lines in the 41st and Fox area there by number 7. And we've recently done some field visits in that area and scooted a few of the connections around to provide better direct connections once we were out in the field to the station. So we got some feedback on that from community members and had an opportunity to catch people as they were coming home from work. We heard about some challenges on 44th with some blind corners, and happily those are areas where we are going to have sidewalks, not this fall, but in the next year and 2 years out along 44th, connecting along that bridge there and into Globeville and by the Garden Place Elementary, connecting into the Garden Place Elementary. So we've got a lot going on there. The big yellow line down the middle of the map is sidewalks associated with Washington Street and the bond there. And then we do have some other sidewalks in the area along 51st, connecting across Washington and through to the South Platte River Trail. And we do have lots more information on our website, but just wanted to give you an idea that we do have this larger map so that we're helping people understand where we have sidewalk design, where we have sidewalks planned and where we are in terms of timeline. And you'll see, for instance, Washington Street is the furthest out at 2026. And we have some that maybe a little bit after that, that maybe haven't been identified, gaps that we have a little space in our program so that if there are gaps that we haven't identified that the community would like, we can squeeze those in. So that's the big picture on sidewalks. And I think this would be a great time if anyone has any input on sidewalks in this kind of zoomed in area. If anyone has questions or feedback, let me know. And if you have something in the chat, I apologize. I'm trying to look at that. It doesn't look like there's anything in the chat. Great. Well, if no one has any questions, you can always call our sidewalk hotline, and we will have another pop-up next week at Swansea Neighborhood Park. It's a little outside of this map area, but 51st and Steele on Tuesday night from 4:30 to 6:30. So it's just off the map to the east there a little bit. So please feel free to come. We'll have maps of the all the sidewalks in District 9, as well as we'll have our project manager for some sidewalks that are going to be built this fall and into next year, as well as information on Clayton and 49th bike ped facilities. So a lot of information tucked into there. And Sandra is saying, sorry, I was late. I didn't hear the first part. We just were explaining the larger picture for that we have this larger map that you can see on screen of planned sidewalks and what years to anticipate construction, and that we have a pop-up next Tuesday. We had one last night in the 41st and Fox area to go over some detailed design in that area. And we have another pop-up next Tuesday, the 28th, from 4:30 to 6:30 at Swansea Neighborhood Park. And that's at 50, it's off the map to the east, but that is at 52nd and Steel.
Any questions from the CAG on the sidewalk plans?
I saw your note, Sandra. Wonderful. And I'm going to have to jump off, but Anthony, if there are questions that come up later, I just feel free to text me and I'll try to pop back onto the meeting or provide an answer to Anthony directly.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Karen, yes, and I can, and we're also recording the meeting. So if there is any discussion that occurs that additional insight that would be valuable for you to hear of any sort of conversation, I'll make sure you have that recording as well.
Great. I really appreciate that. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for being here tonight. We really appreciate you and want to make sure you stay informed on all the things we're working on in this area.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Beth, and now is it your turn, Beth?
Well, I am going to, I know that Eric was on for a few minutes. He may have had to drop off. He had a very short time frame. So I wanted to just introduce a little bit about Washington. And we did walk through this in detail at the public meeting on the 14th, but I thought we might highlight a few things and then share with you what we heard. So Dave Duzak is on the line. He is with the consultant team that's doing some of the design work. And so I might turn it over to Dave for a minute. Hi there, Dave. And maybe you can just, we don't need to go into a lot of detail, but just quick highlights on kind of what we shared at the public meeting. And you're on mute, Dave.
Sorry about that. Sure, I'll be happy to review Washington Street in a little bit here. So we did talk about this at the public meeting last week. From the Washington Street planning study in 2018, the neighborhood identified a preferred cross-section, which is the top cross-section. And so this was something that the city worked closely with in the neighborhood with during that work. And I wanted to highlight the width of the right-of-way required along Washington Street, at least along this one block. It does vary a little bit, but looking to widen the right-of-way by about 31 feet. And so one thing the city has been looking at since the study was completed is, as an alternative, if we need to reduce the cross-section in some areas to reduce impacts, how do we do that while still maintaining the vision of the planning study? And so we looked at the bottom cross-section here, and two things we looked at is potentially reducing the need for on-street parking on the east side of Washington. Many of the parcels there already have off-street parking lots. And also we could look at reducing the width of the shared use sidewalk from 12 feet to 10 feet. And by looking at those two changes, we could potentially reduce the right-of-way width by 10 feet, which would save for right-of-way acquisition cost and also for the construction cost of the project. So it's still being determined which cross-section. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but that's what we reviewed at the public meeting last week. And then we will kind of walk through
Maybe,
these slides.
yeah,
and
just
the
maybe
best-
just a very high level walk.
Sure, yeah, high level. So we just walk through, this is the graphic from the planning study, just showing the sidewalks in gold and how they would fit in Washington Street, and basically showing how the roadway would shift to the east side to avoid building impacts. And that it does shift a little bit back and forth, but that was the gist of the presentation last week. And I guess I won't go in detail right now, but this is the full cross section that the community had preferred, shown on this graphic here. So it could potentially be 10 feet less of width required in the future. And then there's the 51st Avenue. This is a separate project, but it kind of blends in with Washington as a whole. We're realigning the intersection to shift the eastbound approach to the south to line up with the westbound approach at one single point. And we'll be placing a new traffic signal at that location as well.
So I wanted to, we definitely want to share with you what we heard from the community at the last meeting, but just keep in mind, if you had a question or there's something else you'd like to add to this, please just raise your hand or add to the chat, and we can certainly discuss it. So a couple things that came out of the community meeting, an interest in putting a stoplight at 52nd in Washington. We did get some positive comments. They'd be glad to see that it's coming along, glad to see it looks good. We'd had a conversation about bike lanes on Washington, and we discussed the fact that the shared use lanes or shared use sidewalks were really the solution at the time of the study. So that's what's being considered rather than specific bike lanes at this time. We did have comments that sometimes reducing parking can be considered a plus and less congested along the street. Don't forget about transit and the shelters. Artwork would be a great improvement. Artwork that connects up to the 51st Bridge is also of interest. Then we had opposite. Parking can act as a buffer for safety and security, so good thinking there too. We had some interest in the waterfront area at 51st acting like San Antonio. So people had some big ideas about how to better engage the water, especially off of 51st. And then a couple folks that mentioned specifically River Sisters committee meetings with the mayor that had gotten into some of the benefits that the river should be bringing and how we should be thinking about that as we think about Washington and 51st and the Ozark. Primary comments, and I just want to open it up. Is there anyone who had questions or other comments on Washington itself?
You can also use the chat if there are things that you would like to add to this list in terms of design and issues that are important to you. Or if you want to endorse some of the ones you've seen, that would be great too, because as much input as we can get is really what will help the planning team and design team. So if you'd like to add anything else in, please, you can add it in the chat, or you can also let Anthony know. So Beth, do you want to move on to our next topic?
So Dave,
Beth, Sandra just raised her hand. You may not have seen.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. Sandra.
Estoy en español.
Sí.
Ok. Quería saber si se pueden agregar cosas o ya eso es lo que se va a quedar. En una de las reuniones, yo no pude estar en las otras reuniones pasadas, pero en unas de las reuniones que estuve, sí mencioné que para mí era innecesario las líneas de bicicleta, porque aquí no sé, bueno, yo no sé, pero casi no veo personas que vivan aquí y andan en bicicleta. Pero sí que era muy importante que realmente hagan las banquetas que hemos estado pidiendo, y no solamente aquí, ¿no? Sino en los tres vecindarios que hay aquí. Y también sí, veo que hay aquí que se mencionaron que quieren poner arte. Una de las cosas que estarían bien es que si van a hacer arte, que le den la oportunidad a los jóvenes y a los niños de ser parte de ese proyecto de arte. Sabemos que hay muchas murales, pero siempre van con las mismas personas que son profesionales o personas de la vecindad que han estado haciendo murales, que es algo bueno que sí escojan a personas de la vecindad, pero también sería bueno que pensaran en otras personas, en niños, en adolescentes, para si es que están pensando hacer más proyectos de arte. Solamente una sugerencia.
Thank you, Sandra, for those comments. And I'll just, yes, you can continue to comment, and you can do that in the chat, or you can also send your comments to Anthony Aragon.
And Beth, in the chat, Joe Henry was just chatted that he's having trouble hearing you, but I'm not sure. And then the other thing, I think we have our Washington Area Program Projects website. And I think what we can do is we can go ahead and post these comments to the website as well, so that community members, if they're interested to hear what discussion or comments community members have, that we can add this information. And Sandra, your point is well taken. We will actually add another bullet to try to engage youth as we look at our work.
Great. Okay, well, hopefully you can hear me. I don't know what to fix. So, okay, so I think if we're ready, we can just move to the other component of the Washington discussion, which is 51st. And Dave, I'm going to let you just describe it, and then I'll just pull up one of the focused graphics of the intersection.
Sure thing. So 51st Avenue is a project that ties directly into Washington Street. The project limits are from Logan Street to Emerson Street. And this provides a direct connection to the new National Western Center Bridge over the Platte as well. It's a separate project, but it will connect it directly to that. We have two cross sections, or four cross sections. The top two are the existing condition of the roadway today, and the bottom two show the proposed improvements. Notice that they were going to be constructing sidewalk and bike facilities for the entire corridor. And the bike facilities will either be a bike lane with a buffer between the bike lane and traffic, or it'll be a wider sidewalk, or called a shared use path, for both walking and biking. And this is the intersection of Washington Street. You'll see that the west leg, or the eastbound approach, is being realigned, as I noted a minute ago. And so the current traffic signal is on the eastbound approach, and that will be removed and shifted to the south to meet up where the four legs will meet under the existing condition, under the proposed condition. The gold color is the new sidewalk. We do have the remnant parcel, we're calling it, which is the current roadway, which will not be needed any longer. And so we are looking for feedback from the community what we may be able to do with this land once the roadway is reconstructed. That was included in the planning study from back in 2018 about some ideas, and we're still looking for more feedback on that as we move forward.
So are there any questions that we can answer about 51st and the design and where that's landed? I think on this slide, Dave, I included some of your schedule.
Right, so we're pretty far along with the design. We've completed the preliminary design this summer. The next level is the final design, which will be completed in early 2022. Then the acquisition process with real estate will occur. That typically takes about 18 months to acquire the right-of-way required for the project. Once that's complete, we'll advertise and bid the project in mid to late 2023. and that will lead to construction beginning in early part of 2024.
Okay, so maybe you guys can watch the chat. At the public meeting, we didn't have too many questions about 51st, just some clarifications on how that design was coming and the timing of things, but really not too many big comments or concerns about moving forward with the design.
Any questions, comments? Again, use the chat. I'll always have Anthony available. Anthony, for some reason, I'm not seeing the chats. They're not updating for me. So if there's anything.
I'm watching it. Yeah.
Okay,
and
thank you.
There are none. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Beth, should we continue?
Going. So I don't believe that we have anybody from the Globeville team on tonight. So I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough. And if there is, please speak up. So I just wanted to note, remember on our Globeville levy project, we have 3 phases to this project. The first phase up by Heron Pond is going to be entering into, they've finished final design and they'll be entering into construction. So that's exciting. And one of the representatives from the city, Jim Coakley, was able to kind of walk us through a few of those details, but just be aware that that's moving ahead. And then this next 2 phases are, phase 2 is the design of the levee up to about 38. And then the third phase is from 38 to 31st along Ringsby. So what we did is we just talked a little bit about what the team is working on. They are in 30% design right now. And so things are moving along. We're kind of have a chance to walk through it a little bit here. I'll just kind of give you the highlights, but essentially understanding that part of this project was the actual improvements to the trail itself, which is going to be great. Some of these, most of this is earthen berm, or the big berm through here. And then as we move south, there's a section where it is a levee wall in yellow. And then some additional berm and improvements under 70 and some access point improvements. And then kind of getting into the wall component, and then Ringsby itself, as you approach it, is mostly berm, but then just south of there to 31st is a wall again. And so we just, the team walked the community through what they can anticipate, how things are moving forward. They're just in design. Here's that last piece of Ringsby Court. And the design is coming together. And so they asked what aspects of this levee project are most important or critical to you. And we kind of have to recognize that, the designing is kind of their job, but there are aspects of this job that are related to pedestrians and crossings. And so we heard, make sure that we get access to the levee trail at 48th outfall, which we'll look at here in a minute. Questions about whether trails would go both above and below the bridges. So the 51st bridge, does the levee trail pass under the 51st bridge? And yes, it does. That trail will continue there. And then there are also sidewalk and bike improvements over the 51st Avenue Bridge. So both below and at the bridge. And then just remember to keep incorporating the artwork that is being done, the existing design, and everything else being done in the area, and then keep our eyes open for other art opportunities. I think this was just something that came across quite a bit. Make sure that art is representative of Globeville. One family had a property along the levee at 50th and wondering about impacts. The right-of-way folks explained that as this design moves forward, if there are impacts, they will be in touch with property owners specifically and directly. And then we had some concerns about water value or water quality components of the river. And are we going to be addressing those as the levee moves forward? So those will be considered. But one of the things the team had shared is that when the levee is built, the you can't really have trees on top of the levee because the roots compromise the effectiveness of the levee, or could. And so the levee will have the trail and it will be nice, but it will also not have trees right at the top of the levee. So does anyone on the call have questions or want to chat about the levee project or have some additional comments for us to think about?
Anthony, are you seeing any in the chat?
There are none.
Okay. Any comments from anyone in the meeting? Questions? Okay. You're on a roll, Beth.
Okay, so, all right. So the last one we want to run through is the 48th Avenue outfall. And we do have Jeff, who's the consultant project manager, on the line tonight. And so I want to, Jeff, we're going to move, briefly through it, but this is one where the team has actually developed some options or alternatives. And so if you didn't get a chance to see these at the public meeting, that was the first time they were really shared. This is a good chance to see some of the options that are coming together. No decisions have been made, but we would really, really like to hear your opinion on which ideas you like best. So maybe with that, Jeff, I'll let you just introduce the location and then we'll move into those options.
Yes, thank you, Beth. So the 48th Avenue outfall project is really focused at providing an outfall connection from Lincoln Street to the river. And so the alignment's shown here on the screen along 48th Avenue, and then ultimately across the railroad, across Washington Street, and then connecting to the river. That area that you see in with the red outline is the focus point kind of the alternatives that we've put together. And that area is going to be expanded on the following exhibits for a little better understanding of what some options could be. That portion of the project will be carried to final design in the near future, and the entire project will be carried to 60% design before we carry that part to final and to construction. Next slide. So one of the alternatives, alternative 2 we call it, includes a greenway connection and an existing alignment along 48th Avenue for the street improvements and then connection across to the future Betty Cram Bridge. And this includes a greenway corridor with a storm sewer culvert that would be underneath that corridor. One of the key features here is that this corridor is offset from the intersection of Washington and Elgin. And it also requires that we look at some other options to keep some of the local street networks connected on the north side. So we end up kind of squeezing the corridor in this situation, but we're able to find some greenway connection and still have a trail connection ultimately from the river trail over to Washington Street through this greenway. One of the key pieces here also is that the Betty Cram Bridge is elevated. And so this situation puts the greenway on the north side of the elevated roadway. And so one discussion item that we had was the potential that in the winter, then there would be more icing configurations, difficulty with maybe getting snow melt out of the greenway and keeping it more usable for pedestrians. Next slide. Alternative 3 is a configuration that we put together by looking at adjusting the alignment of the Betty Cram Bridge and allowing the future 48th roadway connection to connect and align with Elgin Place. And so what this does is it pushes that intersection further from the railroad, provides some turning lane components that are actually a part of the Washington Street project. And it also allows a direct connection potentially to the north for Clarkson Street. And this allows the local street connections to occur without having to cross the greenway or loop back on themselves. And it also puts the greenway on the south side of that elevated roadway. In this configuration, we're able to have a larger greenway corridor and work for an opportunity to have that bike trail, that shared use path connecting over to the river trail. The two-way cycle track along the south side of 48th is actually able to connect into the street the sidewalk network into the South Platte River Trail without requiring users to cross over 48. So in the alternative 2 configuration, they would have had to cross the street then to get onto the sidewalk or the trail network. So that's kind of a key configuration with this alternative. And then on the next slide, we have alternative 3, which is an open channel. And this is a kind of a variation of the alternative 3 concept, in which instead of having box culverts underneath a greenway for primary stormwater conveyance, this looked at the opportunity or the potential for opening up into an open channel configuration and trying to use some terracing and some variations in trails to connect through this area. This caused some complications in terms of just generally connecting down into the area where there's a significant amount of stormwater that would be traveling through, and also just the vertical restrictions of trying to drop down closer to a stormwater corridor. And this would have a channel that would be about 10 or 12 feet deep in this configuration. So just really looking at some alternatives to just create some variability. And at the end, we wanted to just get feedback on these different options. And any thoughts you have on connectivity and how these can be implemented. I think that one of the comments I think Beth will probably touch on, but the more connectivity and walkable space that we can provide, that seemed to be a positive outcome and definitely of interest to the folks that were able to be on the open house.
Yeah, great.
Beth, Sandra
Yes.
was asking if you could go back to alternative 1 for her.
It was actually called alternative 2.
Oops.
Alternative 1 is really, we don't do much with the greenway. I think it's mostly all pipe. Correct, Jeff?
Yep.
Okay, Sandra, go ahead.
Sandra, do you have questions about this alternative greenway with the storm culvert? You're okay?
Yep, she said thank you in the chat as well.
Okay, saw your thumbs up too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay,
And Beth,
so-
really quick
yeah.
question. These slides will be a part of the website, right? So that if people wanted to visit and then provide any comment, they could do so.
Yeah, we can definitely and should post these under the project under 48th on our website, or they are also in the presentation from the public meeting. So either way, you can find these.
Right. And for those community members who've joined us tonight, CAG members, next week we will send out the recording in both English and Spanish, and we will send out a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation so that you have this information, and that'll get distributed to you probably next week, but we will make sure that we also add it to the project web page as well.
So let's just take a quick look. So that's one version. This is the other, right? Where 48th is to the north. This is more of a greenway. This is more of a channel, wider water area. And then I want to share a little bit about what we heard. So we asked, what components of the layouts are you most excited about? And the thing, as Jeff was mentioning, the accessibility to the river. That was a big one. That was actually probably the biggest one we heard. And connecting to the bike paths or any other bike opportunities. And I want to just point out, there was lots of people already cross at point 2, so it's a good idea. I'm going to take you back to the original map because I just want to point out what that was. So there was an idea that has been discussed a little bit, not at great length, but pretty, initially, to connect Argo Park back to platform open space, either through a tunnel or a bridge, but really trying to relink these. And so that's something that the team hasn't looked at in detail yet, but it was an idea. And so we were kind of glad to hear that seemed to be of interest to folks. So just to go back to where we were. So those were some of the things that people liked. I would love if you guys could put in the chat things that that strike you as good about any of these options. We really would like to take that forward as the design continues. And then this question asks, what part of the layouts are you least excited about? And the answers here were the option where it's just a field and it's not as much of a connectivity improvement are least exciting. We had some questions about Betty Cram and who she was and what role she played and why the bridge was named after her. And
You want to
then,
just answer that question for those who were, yeah.
yeah, so she was involved in all of the original master planning for the National Western Center. She was a very active participant and in her 90s at the time. And she actually worked at the national, one of the stock show building there as a phone operator in her early years. So a lot of experience with that site and lived in Brooklyn. So, and then we did have some questions about the bike connectivity being great and important for the actual 48th connection. But when you get to Lincoln, you know, some concerns about traffic and different things on Lincoln. So I know that was a little bit outside of the 48th discussion, but just reminding us back to the Lincoln Bikeway team that they'd like to look at that design, think that through, and kind of think about what can be done on other streets as well for bike connectivity. And then lost connection to Argo Park at Elgin and Pearl. That's primarily due to the railroads. So something that's also going to be looked at as the whole Greenway gets designed, how to relink all of that. And then the last thing that we had, and then I'll make sure we open it up, is what alternative configuration do you find most appealing or beneficial to Brookville? So we had a question about, can the addition of sidewalks to the outfall along there be implemented in the planning phase? Do we have to wait for the full implementation of the outfall? So I don't have a good answer, but we can certainly consider some of those near-term improvements. But I know there's a lot of design still that's coming on the outfall itself. Then we finally heard that the South Side Greenway with 48th Avenue to the north provides much more walkable connection there and usable space. And anything that provides a walkable connection is the best. That's kind of what was being discussed. Melting the snow is important, so that one works for that as well. And then the vegetation additions are the most positive. So anything to do with more green is the best way to go. So I just want to ask this, does anyone have any thoughts on this? Or do you have a favorite? Oops, sorry, that you'd like to throw out or discuss?
I'm not seeing any comments in the chat.
I know a lot of you were at the meeting and others of you have been on the website. So, but if you do have other comments that you'd like to add in later as you look through the material, please don't hesitate to reach out to Anthony.
And I might add that we are in a 10% phase alternatives analysis at this point, and we'll be moving forward. Our next phase will be concept design. And so we anticipate, continuing to gather feedback and then making final scoping directions, decisions for the project, and then moving to concept design later this fall for the schedule for this project.
So there'll be lots of opportunities for you to continue to comment, and certainly we're going to be offering them through the CAG. So you don't have to worry that if you don't have a comment now that you won't have opportunity to do so in the future. There will be. Thanks, Jeff, for that. So I think we want to go to 3-month look ahead. Thank you, Beth. And you can see that in the 3-month look ahead, we've got some additional information we'd like to share with you and get your comments on. I just lost that. Here it is. In October, you can see that we're going to talk about the Washington Street RIAS. Is that right?
It's a typo.
Or raise.
The raise grant.
Okay, the raise
My
grant.
fault.
Yeah, and
Too
that
fast.
as well as the RIAS grant update. We'll talk more about the connectivity study so that we can bring you up to date that. And obviously, we need to talk to you more about the National Western Center's coordination with them. So those October will be a busy month. In November, we'll come back to you on the 48th outfall design and the final connectivity study that you heard about this evening. And then in December, some time for you to have holiday cheer without us. So we won't be meeting in December. So that's gives you a sense of where we're headed for the next 3 months. And if there are other issues that you think we need to be talking about that have come to mind, please don't, again, hesitate to talk with Anthony. And I think now is whether, as we near this, the end of our evening, well, we have about 10 minutes left, is whether there's any community announcements or open discussions. Angela, Garcia, this is usually when you ask a question, but I want to be sure. You've been sitting silent for the meeting.
Oh my gosh, you just cocked me up so hard. And you're right, because I did. Yeah, apparently you all know me too well. I do have a question. Mine is simple though. What is the website exactly, so we can get in there and look, or you could add it to the minutes, etc., when they come out in a week or so, just so I could bookmark it and I could like send it to other people in the neighborhood so they could look at it as well.
Okay, Anthony can answer. We'll offer that in the chat so that you can have it, and the rest of the team who've not already bookmarked it can do that as well.
But I'm on the phone.
Yeah,
Oh, we'll send it to you.
send it to you, of course.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Angela.
I don't have anything else. I think we're all really tired with the weather changing because you haven't had much comment tonight.
I know, but we've shared a lot of information. Again, there's always opportunity to continue to comment. Any other questions or comments?
I have an announcement that you shared and I forgot about. It was a busy week. So we all of the folks here in Globeville participated in the Globeville Stormwater System study. And that was a couple years back now, but it was a very ardent and involved effort. And I think all the work that you're seeing out of 48th and the levy as well is all a product of that, right? And so this last week, the Colorado Association of State Floodplain Managers, long title, awarded that study the engineering award, the Engineering Excellence Award.
Oh.
So I just wanted to say we had submitted a video and Angela was part of that video, and it was quite the undertaking to share the information about the study, but they voted hands down on this project and on the study from Globeville. And so I just wanted to share that, and I just thought everyone should be very proud of all the work they did in that.
That's great. That's where community input really makes a difference, and having your voice at the table is really important to us. Sandra, I see your hand is raised.
Mi pregunta es, hablando del website, toda esta información, las fotos, el plan, todo está en español. ¿Cómo lo están compartiendo con las personas que hablan español solamente? ¿Y qué tanta información podemos compartir con nuestros vecinos también? Yo sé que muchas de estas cosas están públicas, pero qué cosas no están públicas y qué tanto podemos compartir con nuestros vecinos y qué tanto realmente van a escuchar la voz, porque yo sé que han estado votando la comunidad y han estado mencionando que quieren todas estas cosas, pero al final, ¿quién va a tomar las decisiones de qué se va a quedar y qué no se va a quedar, qué se va a hacer y qué no se va a hacer? ¿Realmente se va a tomar la voz de la comunidad y cuánta esta información se está llevando también a las personas de habla hispana, no solamente a los ingleses, sino también tenemos una comunidad muy grande de solamente de personas que hablan en español?
So I can answer the question related to the website. If you just click on the website, there is a language button and it takes you from English and actually converts everything into Spanish and actually other languages as well. And I seem to have, at the very top right, obviously it defaults to English, but then Spanish is the first one. And then there's another 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 additional, 12 additional languages that it will convert the website to.
And Beth, do you want to talk a little bit about why community input and the role of the CAG is so important in this process? You're on mute, Beth.
Yeah, and I have to admit that when I'm presenting, I'm not able to choose a language channel. So I don't know why, but so I have to rely on you to tell me what is being said. But yeah, so this community advisory group that we have here is extremely important to all of these jobs. In fact, over here in Washington area now, we are bringing all the projects that are underway to this group. So each of the projects doesn't have its own stakeholder group. It is relying on this group to provide input and feedback and opinion on all these really important projects. And so we're hoping to keep this group an active part and get our attendance numbers back up. So we need to maybe kind of push for that a little bit.
Sandra, I would also add that the CAG is really is a really important avenue for community to hear on a regular basis and to provide voice about these projects on a regular basis as well. That is why the CAG has really been established, is because DOTI has really focused in on getting as much community input around all of these projects that are affecting the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea area. So we're also hopeful, as we share information with you, that you will share information with people that you know and invite them to these meetings. It's not limited to just CAG members. We're very, very hopeful that if there are individuals who you would like to share this information with, we can either do that through the website or we can schedule some meetings, but also they're absolutely invited to attend these meetings along with you. And because we have interpretation, we're able to provide that information in dual language. So, and make sure that all the material is, as Anthony described, is available to them in their own language. So it's a great question. And we want to be sure that we're offering every opportunity for as many community members to participate in any way they can.
Yep. And Catherine, a couple points, and then Jim Garcia has his hand up. So Jim, thank you for your patience. So Sandra, what I do with the CAG, any information that I share with the CAG, even an invitation, an email invitation, it's in English and it's in Spanish. And that's the email that I send so that it's in both English and in Spanish. The recordings we do in both English and in Spanish as well. Full disclosure, and thank you for bringing up your comment about the website, because I thought that it was translated into Spanish and all these other languages, but I just tested it and it didn't do anything. So I have sent an email to our website guru with our PI, our public information office, to ask him why that feature is not working. And I will make sure to get you an answer, because we thought, obviously, with all of those menu options of different languages, that it worked, and it did not. So thank you for bringing that up, and I will get you an answer as quickly as possible. It should be able to just click on the language and then it converts the entire website to that particular language. So I will get you that answer as quickly as possible. And finally, yes, please, by no means, when we set up this community advisory group, it was not to be like a one and done sort of, here's the people that are going to be part of this monthly meeting and that's it. Absolutely not. If there are community members that would like to be a part of this process, we welcome them. And we do rely, much like on yourself, to let us know that you need more people here. There's, other voices need to be part of this conversation. we are absolutely ready to invite them and include them in the distribution list. So if you'll just let me know who those individuals are, I'll make sure to include them moving forward.
And also, if there's a group of Spanish speakers who want to have a meeting or have a briefing by Beth, that all can be established and arranged. So don't hesitate to ask and reach out to Beth or Anthony, because if there's a small group or even a large group of individuals who would like to hear more about that, that's what the Office of Community and Business Engagement is all about. We want to be able to get this information to you in a way that is timely and informative.
For sure.
And thank you, Jim Garcia, for waiting so patiently.
Thanks, Catherine. Just a real quick announcement that tomorrow from 3 to 6 is the opening of the Denver Art Park. And there's going to be several local artists that'll be featured, including David Oxotel Garcia will have his mural featured tomorrow. So I think it's a 3-day event, but it starts tomorrow from 3 to 6.
Great announcement.
Great, thanks, Jim. And also I want to just give kudos to Jim. Jim walks, I think, quite often the 47th and York pedestrian bridge at 47th and York, and he's been instrumental in reaching out to me to let me know that there is graffiti on that bridge. And I know for the last couple of times we've been able to get the DOTI, it's not a street maintenance team. I'm not sure street maintenance, or I don't think it's solid waste, but anyway, there's a gentleman named Art Mejia who's been very responsive, and there's a team that's gone out to clean that bridge pretty quickly once Jim lets us know that there's graffiti. And Jim, I saw that you just emailed us again that there's yet more graffiti and that it needs a power scrub. So I will follow up with Art as well.
Thanks, Anthony. I really appreciate it. I do try to walk the neighborhood every afternoon if possible, and I think depending on the time of day, there's lots of kids crossing the bridge back and forth. So it's great that the bridge is in good condition. It's a beautiful piece of architecture.
Any other community announcements or questions, concerns? I think we're exactly at 7 o'clock. If there's none, then I'd say good night to you and thank you for giving us an hour of your time tonight. And would really we're going to look forward to seeing you in October as we bring more information and seek your advice and counsel on the projects that we're working on. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you all. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.